Welcome back to episode 46 of the Guardian Project podcast. I'm your host, Andy, and I just checked my Planeswalker points, and it reaffirms that I'm really not great at competitive Magic.
Is that so? And I'm your co-host, Mike Coyle. And so I've been building this cycling deck that is centered all around jokes and puns. The main key to the deck is Tireless Tracker. Do you know why?
No.
Because tireless cycling means you're riding on rim shots.
That was painful.
Please listen carefully.
Oh, yeah.
You're so proud of yourself.
That's my favorite one I've ever done.
Producer Ryan is not impressed.
Yeah, he's doing that on purpose. He has to hold in all of his laughter. It's ridiculous.
He loves it so much. And this is the podcast where we talk about all things Magic the Gathering.
But mostly Commander.
And before we start, we want to thank all of our patrons. If you want to support our show, you can head over to patreon.com/Guardian Project Podcast.
Another way you can support is by dropping a like, a comment, a subscription, depending on where you're listening. We also have a TCG Player affiliate link over on our website, the Guardian Project at guardianprojectpodcast.com. So please order through that.
I'm also a liar. It's Guardian Project Pod. Patreon.com/Guardian Project Pod. Not cast. So just the pod.
Just the pod.
Anyway, what is on the agenda this week?
Today we're going to talk about a few announcements from Wizards of the Coast. So we have Secret Lair, the Godzilla lands.
Godzilla.
We've got sunsetting the Planeswalker Points system. And this week for our main topic, we're going to talk about some of our favorite utility lands that exist that we can use in the Commander format. And we'll finish off with a Commander of the Week, a deck I've been losing to for probably 2 years now. Andy's Omnath Locus of Rage, Mr. Cheeto Hands.
Mr. Cheeto Hands. So we got some new lands. These are secret layers that people that play Commander like. So we've got Godzilla. So five basic lands: plains, island, swamp, mountain, forest, all with Godzilla on the artwork. So it says they are 5 landscapes in the newest edition of the Secret Lair drop. Keep an eye out for special appearances by fan favorite monsters Mothra, Rodent, and Hedorah. This drop includes 5 Japanese language foil full art basic lands with Godzilla on each of them. The lands are actually really cool. The artwork's fantastic.
Very cool artwork.
I just wish they were in English for me.
Well, I mean, you know.
But I think this is on flavor though.
Yeah, for sure.
This is for Godzilla lands. This is really great, and you also get a code for the sleeves on MTG Arena.
Yeah, I'd say I'm looking through these again with these like really big artwork versions of it, and obviously the island is really cool, but I think I like the plains one the best, with a very vibrant Mothra right there in the shot. Seems cool. I'm not all about like the foils or anything. Are these printed in foil?
These are all foil.
All right, so -1 for me, but I'm sure more people like foils than don't. I'm in the minority, I know that.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I like foils. I can only assume they will be a smidgen warped.
Just a
which
smidge.
Is until they can kind of figure that out. I know there's a lot of people that have been posting, I'm not really interested until we can figure out whether or not my cards are going to be Pringles, right, or not.
Well, if you foil your whole deck, then your whole deck is Pringles, and once you pop, you just can't stop.
It's true. Once you start foiling out decks, you want to get all foils, and then you realize quickly you lose your entire Magic budget.
That's 100% true. Unless you somehow stumble onto an Imperial Seal that you can now sell. Holy crap.
Yeah, why don't you tell everybody about that?
So I bought an Imperial Seal 2 years ago to build
the Judge promo.
The Judge
one
promo
you could afford at the
Seal.
time.
Yeah, it was it was actually kind of a good deal. I think they were going for like 110, 120 at the time, and I found one for 90. It was new mint. And I bought it for my mono black Sidisi Undead Vizier deck, which was,
yeah, I remember that.
It's just glass cannon combo, try to win on like turn 2 or 3.
Yeah, with Torment of Hailfire, and it almost always worked, and it was great.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. So I bought it for about $90. That card is currently listed on TCG Player Low. I think there was 5 listings last time I looked. TCG Player Low was $500, with 3 more listings at $600, and the last listing, the 5th listing, for $1,000. So I'm selling it $450. If you want it, you can have it.
Who wants to build a new commander deck or two?
Yeah, it's actually going to be what's funding my my new Zergo Helm Smasher deck, aka my General Grievous theme deck.
Yeah.
So I don't need that much money to fund it, but why not?
Yeah, so these Godzilla lands are cool. Obviously, I think that was circling back to where we were because we got off topic. No, I know. I was like, but what made it so that we went? Oh, it's because we said Pringles. Then you said once you pop, you just can't stop. And foil. You know, I'm just reliving the last 2 minutes of my life.
We got there.
You know, now I remember Pringles equals sell your Imperial Seal.
That's right.
That's what it is. The next announcement of the Planeswalker Points system. So I have 2 different codes, I guess. My profile has 2 different DCI numbers.
Right.
I had one, and then we went to an event and they could not pull it up by the number or by my name. And so I said, well, I'm here, so I guess give me a new DCI number and I'll figure it out later, because you can merge them. And at one of the shops I play out, every time their system updates, it adds my old DCI number back in. And if they use my old DCI number, it unmerges them. So it's been like a whole thing.
Yep.
But I do like to go back in time and look and see where I've played and what I've done. But the announcement says that Planeswalker Points, including login using your DCI number, will be available until May 27th. After that date, you will no longer acquire Planeswalker Points, and you will be unable to access your Planeswalker Points history. For many players, this is going to feel like the end of an era. Comparing 4-digit DCI numbers at events was kind of like a badge of honor. And it says a way to show you how long you've been a part of the community, essentially. It says we're feeling a bit nostalgic over here as well, which is part of the reason we're giving you 30 days to check out your history and rave about your winning record against your friends, or maybe that one time you beat Luis Scott Vargas at a Magic Fest side event. So in the future, if you have a Wizards account, which if you have MTG Arena already, that means you already have a Wizards account. They're going to be utilizing that moving forward. They're, just kind of doing away, and they're moving to a single program, obviously moving forward now. So I went to take a look at my DCI points, and it looks like, or my Planeswalker points. And right now I have 924 as my lifetime points.
Okay.
And when you look at the leaderboard, right? So the leaderboard of just this season, I have, or I guess from within the last year, I have 90, and that's like 1/7 of what the person in first place has. So it's like, okay, that's not so bad. But then when you look at lifetime points, the number one Planeswalker points is 119,503.
That's a lot of points.
Almost 119 times my points.
And probably even more than mine. I know I had a similar issue where I had 2 different DCIs at either of our local game stores. Plus, I got a new DCI when I didn't bring my DCI card and number with me to Magic Fest Detroit.
Yep.
And then tried merging them. They got unmerged, all that jazz. And then I stopped playing Standard. I played 1 Modern double up. I probably have like 20 points, quite honestly.
My first I guess event ever using my DCI number was the pre-release for Original Theros.
Oh,
was when I got my DCI number.
Very nice.
So it's got all the way back to that pre-release, and and most recently, it shows me the history of going 3-0 at a draft, and so that was kind of exciting. But you won't really be able to look back on these in the future. But I have seen some posts where you can run a command which will export it to a CSV file. So I haven't really been able to play around with it yet, but I might be able to export all of this. So yeah, so they're getting rid of the Planeswalker point system, but for people who play Commander, there aren't a ton of events, and it doesn't really show any details because it just appears as a Magic casual event. How many people were there? So this last one had there were 23 players playing in this Commander event, and you get a point for playing. So I would say 99% of all of my points are coming from an event where I'm getting 1 point for playing Commander.
Right.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if they come up with another process coming forward or going forward where you can track your games that you've played. There were people that were saying that they've tracked it because they've lived in multiple different countries, and they've been able to see based on their previous games and what time they were playing at what store, and that's pretty cool if you've played competitively and traveled a lot for that.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but I guess we'll see what happens in the future, and hopefully we can start tracking some Commander stuff.
Yeah, that would be cool. I mean,
speaking of
tournament setting, but I don't know how much they're going to support that. But the casual events, yeah, and where you played them.
Yes, and speaking of Commander, we're going to talk about utility lands today. Yeah. So utility land is a land that has an effect or ability other than just generating mana.
Right.
So what we did was in no particular order, and these are we each picked 5 utility lands that we like or we use consistently, and we're going to talk about them and why we like them, and why you should be playing them.
Yeah.
Or if you are, why you're really great and playing these awesome lands.
This is why you're really great. Not that you need our approval. You should think you're great anyways.
Episode of this title, this is why you're really great.
This is why you're great.
This is why you're great. Well, I'll start with my first one then.
Absolutely.
So Cepheid Coliseum is for people who like to play blue and also like to draw cards.
Oh, yeah.
So Cepheid Coliseum is a land that taps for a blue, and it deals 1 damage to you when you do that. And then it also has Threshold and a blue. So Threshold says you can only activate this ability or play this ability if there are 7 more cards in your graveyard. So you can sacrifice it by paying a blue and tapping it with Threshold, and you or target player draws 3 cards and then discards 3 cards. So I play this in the Locust God deck.
Right.
It is I guess the top commanders, I guess that this is played the most in, not based on percentage, but by numbers, would be Tasigur the Golden Fang, Kess Dissident Mage, and the Locust God.
Mm-hmm.
There are some decks that have a higher percentage, like Aboshan Cephalid Emperor based on EDH rec, and it's in 50% of those decks, but there's only 48 of those decks.
Yeah, 24 of those decks run this card.
24 of them, but 24% of all the 2039 Tasigur decks run this. So for 496 decks. I think this card's really great. I think if you have more than 3 cards in hand, it just lets you try to draw 3. I mean, you're not getting card advantage unless you have something else that's letting you draw double, or making it so that if you discard you don't have to, or whatever ability is out there. But sometimes on turn 9 you just don't want that 1 land that's in your hand, or the 1 card that's in your hand. or 3 lands. You can draw 3 and then get rid of the 3 cards you don't need, and at least just having what feels like a new hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
this is actually, you mentioned Kess and Tasigur. This actually is a way where you don't need to cast a spell to draw a card for your Laboratory Maniac win condition. But also one of the new legendaries that they printed, Riel, the Everwise. This is absolutely fantastic in that deck, because she says the first time you would discard cards, you then draw cards equal to the number of cards you discarded. It's the first time per turn. So this allows you to draw 3, discard 3, and then draw another 3. So you're actually, just for 1 blue, filtering your hand and then gaining 3 cards. So that's crazy.
And she gets +1/+0 for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard. So if you just pitch 3 things that you know that have flashback and you can use next turn, they're good having them just sitting in the graveyard. I think this card is probably, well, not probably, I think it's underplayed. It's in 4,268 decks according to EDH Rec, which is only 2% of the decks it could be in. It's just a really good card. And I think you should play it more often if you're not.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you can pick one up for under $5. So I think, worth playing.
It's good stuff.
All right, the next land we have on our list is my first land. And you wouldn't think that I would bring up a land like this.
No, I would not think this.
But it's because it screws me so hard in so many different games that I thought it's worth mentioning. The land is Pachuca Bog. So Pachuca Bog is a land that taps for black and enters the field tapped. And the big payoff is when it enters the battlefield, you exile all cards from target player's graveyard.
Yeah.
So this is really good against those reanimator decks, graveyard decks, which I love to play. But the best part is it produces a black mana. A lot of these utility lands that we're looking at, they'll either do damage to you to produce a color of mana, or they'll produce a colorless mana. But this one actually produces a black, which can be very important. But on top of it, it's an enter the battlefield effect. So if you have ways to instantaneously get it on the battlefield, like a crop rotation or something, you can actually use it as kind of a trick when someone tries to reanimate a creature from their own graveyard. Crop rotation out of Pachuca Bog, and now they don't have a target. So I hate this card with a passion, but that doesn't mean it's not good. It's a real good card.
You could play it and exile your own graveyard.
You could. I don't recommend it. Unless someone's trying to reanimate something from your graveyard, then absolutely, actually. Why not?
Ugh. Because you have other targets you don't want to lose, right?
Sometimes you gotta cut your losses.
So this is played in a lot of decks.
Yeah, it's 33% of decks that it's played in. It has been printed in a ton of Commander precons.
Which I also think inflates these numbers.
For sure.
100%.
Yeah, we see Lord Windgrace and Kadena, and even one of the new commanders coming out, Jarina Kudrow, the Humans Matters. It's printed in that precon as well.
Yeah. 78% of Lord Windgrace decks have it, but this was just in that precon, correct for that?
It was in that precon, and then on top of it, it's not a card that you cut from that deck, because again, you get the opportunity to have green, so you can do the tricks like with a crop rotation. You can search it up with an Hour of Promise. There's obviously
you can just sack it with your squandered resources and bring it back with Lord Windgrace immediately.
Absolutely.
Yeah, scape shift into it, whatever you need with Lord Windgrace.
Yeah, even one underused, and I actually don't see the commander on this list on the card, is in a Yarok deck. Since Yarok doesn't care what the permanent is that's entering the battlefield that's causing something to trigger, it does double trigger on your land ETB, so you get to exile 2 different players' graveyards when you have Yarok out on the battlefield. So
exiling graveyards needs to be played more often. I am running into more and more graveyard just shenanigans, even if it's only one card. Sometimes we played the other day, and we just played on stream last Friday. If you weren't able to catch the stream, there was a Living End and a Living Death played
3 or 4 times.
3 or 4 times because they kept getting cast from the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
You just need to Pachuca Bog that one person's graveyard who consistently casts spells from the graveyard.
I did actually Pachuca Bog one of those players.
Did you?
I did. I Pachuca Bogged Chris. He was upset.
I just sat there really, I felt like I was reaping the benefits of all of those things because I had creatures that I could sack in response, and then they'd come right back to the battlefield.
Yeah,
so I had a ton of mana.
How many times did Steve come out there? Your soccer
I mean,
tribe elder?
My Sakura tribe elder. I mean, it was reanimated every single time. Yeah, every single time it happened. So he came back 4 times, and I got 5 lands off of 2 mana.
Yeah, normally only Marin can make that happen, but you were not playing Marin.
I was not, and I was playing against a 5-color deck that was doing this. And then what were you playing?
I was playing Hogak. I was playing my 2.
Oh, that's right. Yep. So play Pachuca Bog in your decks. It's an unnecessary evil, but or unnecessary.
It's
evil.
a necessary evil.
It is a necessary evil.
It does come in tapped, but the utility from the ETB is good enough where it shouldn't matter. Just play it when you can. Play it at the right time.
Right. Speaking of another land that comes in tapped, my next card is Myriad Landscape. Really good. Comes in some Commander Precon. Actually, it's in the most recent Commander Precon as well.
Yep.
So it is a land that enters tapped. It taps for a generic mana, or you can pay 2 generic, tap and sack it, search your library for 2 basic land cards that share a land type, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. So if you are playing a color like white or red that has a hard time ramping without artifacts, this is actually ramp. If you play this on turn 1 or 2, on turn 3 you get 2 lands, so you are getting an additional land. It does come in tapped, but that's okay. Play your Amulet of Vigor if you need. Then they'll come in untapped. But you can search for an island and a snow-covered island because they're both islands.
Correct.
So if that matters to you, but I run this card I run it in the deck I'll talk about during Commander of the Week.
Yeah.
And I run this in a lot of decks.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't have the number. I should have grabbed that number.
It's good. It's good ramp. And again, it's generic, so there's no color orientation to it. So you can play it in every single deck. And you get landfall triggers in case your landfall matters. You get 2 landfall triggers when you sacrifice it and search for your lands. And like you said, it's ramp. So
it's ramp, and if you're running, I mean, I honestly think that this is one of those utility lands that you can play in a deck that has 2, I mean, or even 3 colors. I mean, it gets hard when you're going up to 4 and 5 color because you have to grab 2 that share the same type. But in 3 color, you might have 2 of your colors and not the 3rd, and then you just get 2 of that 3rd color. When you're getting up to 4 and 5 color, I probably wouldn't play this card.
Right.
No, I definitely would not play this card in a 4 or 5 color deck.
So the other thing that could be said about this card is it does produce colorless mana, which can be important. You know, there are some activation costs out there on some creatures and some artifacts that require colorless mana. And you don't want to just throw in basic wastes or anything like that in order to produce your colorless mana. You can depend on your utility lands. And this is a fantastic utility land. If you need it for the colorless, you got it. If you don't, you got ramp.
Yep. You know, looking at this, there's it's played in 18% of all the decks that it can be played in. The top, you know, based on number wise, they're again pre-con commanders. So you've got Cadinus Linking Sorcery, Savine the Chronoclasm, and Girid Conclave Exile. If you know, I'm going to say it just because it's there. The commander Kuru Pitlord, it's played in 100% of those decks.
All 6 of them.
All 6 are playing it. All 6 are playing it. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, sack this creature, the commander, unless you pay 4 black. So this is going to get you two black towards that, and that's a commander that costs 9. So
you got it. And you see, go ahead.
I must be missing something about why this is played in all 6 of those.
Because there's one guy that made all 6 of these decks. That's why. But you see some of these really, I guess, high synergy commanders in here, like Titania, who gets triggers off of sacrificing your lands or when they go to the graveyard, as well as Obnixilis the Fallen, who has landfall, and again, your commander that we'll be talking about later.
Omnath, Locus of Rage wants these lands to hit the battlefield. This is even, you know, this is fine in Lord Windgrace again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, our next land we're going to talk about is Gavin Township. So,
hey, are you stealing my style with just putting counters on a ton of creatures, or?
I only play this in one deck, but it's my only green-white deck, so...
and it's really good in that deck.
It's so good in that deck. All right, so Gavin Township is a land that does not enter the battlefield tapped, which is actually really, really, really good for this land. You can tap it to add a colorless, or you can pay 2, a green and a white, and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So doesn't come in tapped is actually like, I mean, other than obviously the part where you put all the counters on your creatures, not coming in tapped is my favorite part about this land. So the turn it comes out, I play this deck. The deck I was referring to is my Reese the Redeemed deck, where you're just making a ton of elf tokens, just have a ton of elves out there. You put a +1/+1 counter on all of them. I mean, you're basically doubling your power. And I also play enchantments such as Doubling Season in that kind of deck. So instead of putting 1 +1/+1 counter on all my creatures, I'm putting 2 +1/+1 counters on my creatures. And this is an effect on a land. You know, in Reese, sometimes I don't find all of my card draw abilities and I'm empty-handed. Well, I still got stuff to do with all of my mana. Like it's a really good mana dump.
I run this in my Sigarda Heron's Grace deck that is basically the same as your elves deck, but I make humans instead of elves. And I can't double my creature tokens like you can very quickly. And my commander costs 5, not 1.
Yeah.
But
one helps.
One helps, but I also run Gavin Township, and it works really well when you're playing, like you said, Doubling Season works really well. If you're already running cards that are putting a bunch of creatures out, like Parallel Lives, we both run Parallel Lives in that deck. You're putting a lot more creatures out, and then essentially doubling their power because your elves and my humans, they all come in as 1/1s, and then instantly double to a 2/2. And yes, if you have nothing else to do, and we are both playing green-white, so green has some card draw. I think my deck focuses more heavily on the white, and yours focuses more heavily on the green. But
Correct.
yes, if you're only running 4 like draw spells, you're not going to hit them every game. You
Absolutely.
might hit 1 if you're lucky.
Right.
So I love Gavin Township.
It's
this
so
card
good.
is very strong. I think it's costed effectively as well at 2 green-white. It's in that spot on the curve where you have to prioritize whether you want to put a counter on your creatures or you're going to play something else out. And sometimes if you're like this creature that costs 3 doesn't do anything really, so I'm just going to put a counter on my creatures instead, and then next turn do something bigger.
Honestly, I think this card would still be really good even if it entered the battlefield tapped. I know I've said it like 4 times already. This enters untapped. This is ridiculous.
Untapped. This is untapped.
And it does produce, again, a colorless mana.
It does.
It's never a dead card. It's absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's dead if you just need green or something.
You're dead to me for bringing that up.
Yeah, Gavin Township. You should play. So this is it's in 10% of the decks I could play it. So this is playing a good amount of decks. Looking at this, actually, the newest commanders that I just built play Gavin Township. Nakara and Yannick, because they care about just any type of counter being on creatures when they leave, or just to put additional counters to pump the strength for Yannick. So that's really good.
If you could play Rishkar Pima Renegade at white, this card would be absolutely bonkers. Because he allows it so that any creature with a +1/+1 counter on it can tap for mana. So dropping a Rishkar and then putting +1/+1 counters on all of your stuff with Gavin Township, now all of a sudden you have enough mana to activate your Reese to Redeemed about 3 times in one turn.
Yeah. I run. I'm looking at these other commanders that want this as well. Amera, Soul of the Accord, just makes a bunch of white soldiers that have lifelink, and I run this in Talismir, Friend to Wolves. I put a +1/+1 counter on all of the creature tokens that I make. If you're playing a token deck and you've got green and white available, you should probably throw Gavin Township in there.
I mean, I think if you're playing any green-white deck, you might as well throw a Gavin Township in there. I mean, you're going to have some point a creature on the battlefield. Might as well
Yeah,
have the option
yeah,
to
and
throw
if,
+1/+1 on them.
yeah, if you're only in 2 colors, you can run more utility lands. I know we've talked about this on podcasts in the past.
Mm-hmm.
You can run more utility lands the less colors you have.
Right.
So if you're just in green white, why not?
Yeah. Agreed.
They don't. Green white is not known for its Voltron strategies.
Can't think of one.
Not just in green white, I guess. There's some others that have these colors that could be, like the new Cathriel Aspect Warper. Looks like it wants to be a Voltron type deck.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'd throw Gavin Township in some more decks. Now let's talk about something else. Do you like getting lightning bolted constantly? Do you want to have all the colors of mana that you need?
Can I say yes to one and no to the other?
No, you have to say yes to both.
Okay, deal.
Well, have I got the land for you? Tarnished Citadel. So I love this card. It comes in untapped. I'm going to get on that train.
Gotta get on that train.
I'm going to get on that train. It comes in untapped. And it taps for 1 generic mana, written out. Add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool.
That's right. It's that old.
It's that old. But it also has tap, lightning bolt yourself, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This card is the City of Brass you didn't know could kick your ass. Oh, you see that?
Wow.
That was
good.
That was pretty good, right?
Yeah.
This one is like tapping 3 City of Brass for 1 generic mana. That's a really bad way to put this when I'm trying...
For 1 of any color mana.
I mean, just 1 single mana, not generic.
Yeah.
For 1 single color. I think this card is actually not bad. Sure, you do take some damage, but I have always said your life total is a resource.
Absolutely.
And I don't mind taking 3 for this. And it's real, and you get to say you play a Tarnished Citadel.
Oh yeah.
You're like, I'm sorry, what land is that? Oh, it's my it's my City of Brass, but instead I lightning bolt myself instead of just take 1.
Yeah, you're welcome, opponent.
You are welcome. It's played, it's funny, the most synergistic deck that this is played in is Darien, King of Killjoy. Because when you take damage, you make that many white soldiers. So you tap it for a white mana, make 3 white soldiers, and then just continue on with your game. But it's one of those lands that shops usually have in stock because people aren't looking for Tarnished Citadel. They're looking for the City of Brass.
Right.
They're looking for the one that's most, commonly played. I think this card falls victim price-wise because it's about $20 for the fact that it's only been printed once.
Right.
A lot of the other cards that will tap for 1 generic mana will have been printed multiple times or more recently. Another card that feels similar is like Spire of Industry.
Sure.
You have to have an artifact and you take a damage, but it'll tap for any 1 color, for one of any color. But I was trying to figure out in this slot if I wanted Tarnished Citadel or Spire of Industry, and I think this card gets talked about the least. So I was going to talk about this one.
I think this one is better than a Spire of Industry. There's no guarantee that you're going to have an artifact on the battlefield to produce that mana. So turn 1, if you need a color of mana, this is going to give you that color of mana, not Spire of Industry.
And you don't have to use it for that 3. You don't have to take the 3. It still does tap for 1 generic. So you really only need to use it when you need it. And if you're in a 3, 4, or 5 color deck, you're like, well, I guess I do need my double red, so I guess I'll lightning bolt myself to get another red.
Sure.
Or whatever that is. It's being played in Kenrith the Returned King. I like it a lot. And if you look at the top commanders for this card, other than Darien, King of Killjoy, the rest are all 4 or 5. For the most part, they're all 5 color decks. That, and you got Villas, Broker of Blood, that likes to, you lose your life and you draw 3 cards as well.
That's great. Produce 1 black, draw 3. It's awesome.
Produce 1 black, draw 3, and then you could even pay 2 more life to give a creature -1/-1 and draw 2 more with that black mana.
1 black, draw 5. Seems fair to me.
Seems fair. Yeah, so I love Tarnished Citadel, and it's played in 1% of the decks it could be played in.
Yeah, it's a great rainbow land. People should
it
be
is a
playing
great
it.
rainbow land. So good.
All right. Next card on the list is one you probably play against in Brawl every day, in and out. Well, every Wednesday. Although Brawler's Guild Hall is still going on right now. You can play in that. This is Field of the Dead.
No, Field of Ruin.
I have Field of the Dead.
Oh, I typed in the wrong land.
You have Field of Ruin as your next card.
You are correct.
But they're both fields, though. You know, they're both fields that produce colorless mana. The Field of the Dead, unfortunately, does enter the battlefield tapped, and it only produces a colorless mana. You might think, why would I want a land like that? Well, the other text on Field of the Dead says, whenever Field of the Dead or another land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands with different names, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So lands that produce creatures without having to pay any mana into them for activation costs, that's ridiculous.
That land could come in tapped and make an untapped 2/2 zombie.
Yeah. It's absolutely wonderful. I mean, you can in Brawl it works, and you don't even have that many names of lands to go look for. In Commander, I mean, you could play I play a deck with Tainted Pact where every single land in the deck has a different name. So
yeah.
it's and if
you don't have to work very hard for this card to do its thing.
Not in Commander, not at all.
Nope.
And I see like the decks that are playing it most are like your Yarick deck, because it double triggers every single time. But even like Golos, Tireless Pilgrim, you know, the more colors, the better. That way you have access to more of these different named lands that you can run. And obviously you want something with green, so it makes it easier to fetch this land. It does produce a colorless. Important. Produces colorless. But yeah, makes creatures.
It makes creatures. It's really good. You know, I'm looking at this list of the top commanders here. We've got Uro, Titan of Nature's Wrath, Omnath, Locus of the Royal, Lord Windgrace, and then Corvold. So synergizes really well with Lord Windgrace. It can come back. Corvold, it makes a zombie that can then be sacrificed. Uro, I didn't think that this one would have been as high in Uro as it is. It's in 42% of the Uro decks, but I guess you are ramping real hard in Uro as your commander, so it makes perfect sense as to why it would be in that deck. Mm-hmm. But I have lost to this card doing minimal amounts of work over a long amount of time, or a significant amount of turns, I guess, in Golos decks.
Oh yeah.
I just, every Golos deck that I've played against, if it drops out the field of the dead, I just expect that they're going to have 7 or 8 zombies in the next like 3 turns.
Right.
They easily ramp, and then they easily, they play more cards that grab more lands.
Right. I mean,
Golos is a secretive land ramp deck.
Well, I mean, his enter the battlefield effect count is lands.
Yes.
I never like when Golos got printed, I'm like, 5 color, like doing the same thing that Narset is kind of doing off the top of your deck. And he's like, hey, you know when it enters the battlefield, you land? I'm like, yeah, that won't matter. That's just whatever. No, that's the main. Yeah, that's the main dealio right there.
It is. Golos grabs, big targets there. You've got Field of the Dead. It grabs things like Glacial Chasm. It grabs the things that it needs at the time, and it's one of those decks that you probably run a higher amount of utility lands in Golos because you're running it as a land toolbox.
For sure.
A lot of toolbox decks are grabbing creatures or enchantments or artifacts. That is the toolbox land deck.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So even if you're not ramping, even like a fetch land like Evolving Wilds can produce you 2 zombies on any given turn. And not to mention a card like Scape Shift to just give you a board of zombies is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. Field of the Dead, very, very good. And it's, it's not too expensive. It looks like it's around $7 right now, and it's only being played in 3% of decks.
Yeah,
so
banned in standard. So I don't think it's seeing a lot of play in like Pioneer, or I think it's a modern sideboard card, or maybe a one of main board in like not Scape Shift, but Titan, Amulet Titan. It probably is played in Scape Shift too, but it's not as prevalent as Amulet Titan is right now. So it's a go wide strategy for Amulet and Modern. So I don't expect the price of the card to go up quickly, but it will go up.
Yeah, it's one of those cards that they'll have to find the right spot to print this card as well. Yeah. Well, let's talk about a card that can remove a card like that. So my next card is Field of Ruin. So it is, it's land destruction, but not mean. 2 players are going to be really happy with this if you're in a 4-man pod. So Field of Ruin comes in untapped and taps for 1 generic mana, and then has pay 2, tap and sacrifice it to destroy a target non-basic land an opponent controls. And then each player searches their library for a basic, puts it onto the battlefield untapped, and then shuffles their library. So I don't like land destruction. Mass land destruction. So I had that in my Narset Enlightened Master. Enlightened Master?
Yes.
Is that's the creature one, not the Planeswalker? I hope I'm not confusing them right now.
No.
Transcendent Master is the...
Oh, okay.
No. So anyway, Field of the Dead, you Google and you Scryfall while I do this. So Field of Ruin can remove that pesky land that is going to hurt everybody. So does someone else have a Mazavith that's preventing your creature from swinging? No, we're just going to get rid of that, and they can have a basic.
That's right. It is Enlightened Master, by the way.
Enlightened Master. Okay. Does someone have a Urborg and Cabal Coffers? You just hit that Urborg, and then that Cabal Coffers hopefully doesn't have very many swamps. If the person got greedy and they're not running very many swamps, even better.
Don't do that. That's so mean.
Leave the Cabal Coffers.
Destroy the Cabal Coffers. You're gonna want those swamps. You're gonna want them.
No, you don't. You just you hit the Urborg. You hit the Urborg, not the Cabal Coffers. Field of Ruin can get rid of. It's so good, and it's targeted removal, but you also give them a basic, so it doesn't feel as bad when you do it. There are some cards like when you play Strip Mine or Wasteland, you're just hurting yourself and them, but this one you're just replacing it with something that's less oppressive against you.
It does come in untapped, that land as well. And the other thing you could actually use it for is it is not a May ability. You must search your library for a basic and put it on the battlefield. So if someone like Vampiric tutored, you could Field of Ruin in response and get rid of whatever they tutored for on top of their library.
It's a very good point. I don't think I've ever run into a situation where I've had this out and available to use when that happened, but that is not something to discount. That is a very good plan.
I actually learned that the hard way playing in Modern one time against Modern Mill, blue-black Mill. There's a card called Archive Trap. For 3 blue and a blue, target opponent puts the top 13 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. But if an opponent searched his or her library this turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay Archive Trap's mana cost. And they would Field of Ruin one of my dual lands and mill me for 13 after that. It was nuts. That's when I learned about that card.
Yeah, so this is only played. This is another card that is underplayed. It's in about 4% of the decks it could be in, and this card has been printed a few times. It was just printed again in this next this was in Theros Beyond Death.
Yeah, and I think the first printing was Ixalan.
Ixalan?
One of the.
So was that only the second? I wonder if that was only the second printing then.
I believe that is correct.
I guess
uncommon both times.
I guess I thought it was printed more than that. Yeah. So Ixalan and Theros Beyond Death. Maybe it just feels like it's been printed a few times because Ixalan wasn't too terribly long ago.
Well, and before this, I mean, they had cards like Ghost Quarters and stuff like that to help with land destruction.
Yep. So this is really good to run in a deck that you can afford to have generic mana and take out that pesky Gaia's Cradle if your opponent has a Gaia's Cradle and is tapping for 9 green mana.
Good target.
For, really good targets there. Field of Ruin, play it.
Cool. Next card on our list we have. I absolutely love this card. It's called Deserted Temple.
I don't run this.
Yeah, I run this in one deck, and I'll tell you why. So Deserted Temple comes in untapped and produces a colorless. Amazing. It's already
solid.
It's already better than a wastes.
Okay.
The other thing you can do is you can pay 1 generic and tap it to untap target land. It does not say untap another target land, just a target land. So you could untap itself with its ability. So if you have another one of these special utility lands, let's say you have a Cepheid Coliseum, you can activate it twice when you have Deserted Temple out. Let's say you have a Gavin Township, you can activate it twice. How about a Cabal Coffer so that you can activate that one twice and just get a ton of mana? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So gross. I specifically wanted to talk about this one because of its synergies with other utility lands. It also has this really cool effect with Rings of Brighthearth. So Rings of Brighthearth says you can pay 2 and copy an activated ability as long as it isn't a mana ability. So you can tap it, and then it untaps target land. And let's say you have a Cabal Coffers out there that's producing at least 5 mana at the time. And you can activate your Rings of Brighthearth to have the activation happen twice and untap both your Cabal Coffers and your Deserted Temple. And it's a way you could actually produce infinite amounts of mana.
I didn't realize that was a thing. I also didn't realize until just now that we have 3 cards from Odyssey on this list.
Turns out Odyssey printed some hella good utility lands.
Tarnished Citadel, Cepheid Coliseum, Deserted Temple. Yeah, I did not realize all 3 of those came. We just picked 5 we each liked, and then I was just looking right now. I said, why is this card also so expensive? And it's Odyssey. It's real old and single printing.
Yeah.
So good. I didn't realize that card comboed like that. I don't run Cabal Coffers and Urborg too often though.
But you run Nykthos Shrine to Nyx in a few decks.
I love Nykthos. Now, I didn't put that on this list because it is not an underplayed card, and a lot of it can do both, but yes, it's not necessarily. Yeah, it's not just a mana producer. It's mana.
Right. So, but you can tap it twice a turn with a Deserted Temple.
Yes, for 1 generic.
It is again a little bit expensive because it was only printed the one time in Odyssey. I think you can get one for, it looks like it might cost you over $20 depending on where you buy it from. It's played in a ton of mono black decks specifically for the Cabal Coffers mana.
Yes. Let's go to a card it's only been printed once, but it's newer. And that land is Spires of Erasca. So it taps for a generic mana. It technically comes in untapped.
It does.
And you can tap it to untap target attacking creature and opponent controls and remove it from combat. So it's just a little old Mazavith on a different land. But you have a hoop you have to jump through first before you just get the land.
How big of a hoop is it?
Well, it's a little baby hoop. Mm-hmm. It's not that bad.
Size 7
It comes in size 7 hoop. It actually comes in as an artifact to begin with, as the thematic compass. So it is one of the transform lands from the Ixalan block. So thematic compass is an artifact that costs 2 generic. It says pay 3, tap it, search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. But then at the beginning of your end step, if you control 7 or more lands, you transform thematic compass into Spires of Araska. So it also had I think there was the Ixalan treasures from when you could buy the boxes. So it has a really cool, like the map from all the cards that make up the plane of Ixalan, like where they were on the map.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool. But this is really great when you're playing against a deck that has, one really awful creature that's swinging against you, or you can make blocking better for you when an opponent swings out. You just remove the more difficult creature from combat. But you can also do it to save your friends.
You
know, if you want to, you could do it politically. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen that done a lot. Oh, I need you alive because if you're not alive, I'm going to lose this other person. So I'm going to untap the creature swinging at you, and I'm okay to take 10 damage, but you're not okay to take 10 damage.
Yep.
So yes, this is not a utility land alone, I guess.
Sure.
It requires that hoop, but I think this is an underplayed card on a card that ramps you and can be played in any color deck.
Yeah. It's also, so it technically doesn't, well, I guess it technically ramps when it flips, but other than that, it does put the land in your hand, but it helps you fix for sure.
Yes.
It's one of the only lands you can tutor for with an Enlightened Tutor. Just saying.
Yeah, you know what? See, even more upside to playing Spires of Araska.
Absolutely.
You have to now. You heard it here. You can tutor this with Enlightened Tutor.
All right, the last card that we have on our list is one that
is not from Odyssey.
It's not from Odyssey. It's from a Kamigawa block, actually.
Is it Champions? I think it's Champions.
Champions of Kamigawa.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I learned about this card from you, Andy. I don't remember what deck you were playing it in.
It was Narset. I apologize.
No, it's fine. I like this card. I learned something.
No, I apologize for the deck, not for this card.
Whatever. So this is Hall of the Bandit Lord. This is a legendary land that does enter the battlefield tapped. And it has the ability of tap it, pay 3 life, add a generic to your mana pool. If that mana is spent on a creature spell, that creature has haste. Not gains haste. Has haste. Same thing.
Forever.
It can always block
it can always block a ginger brew.
That's very true. So this card obviously is a super good card for like a Voltron deck or something. You don't need an artifact such as Swiftfoot Boots or Lightning Greaves in order to give your creature haste. Comes in the battlefield, has haste. It does enter the battlefield tapped, so you are going to have to plan when you're playing this card so that it is untapped when you're ready to play your commander or whatever creature you're planning on playing with it. But it is colorless. You can play it in any deck. It is legendary, so you can't have 2 copies of it, but you're playing commander, so it's probably not that big of a deal.
It is not. I run this card in, so I used to run it in Narset, and then I switched it over because I owned it, and I said, well, I don't want to get rid of this. It's a cool old card. To Zindersplit and Oaken.
Yeah.
So Oaken is, I mean, the coin flip deck is a Voltron deck. You can swing, or sometimes you just need to sacrifice it once its power and toughness are high enough to like a Chandra's Ignition or a Fling. Well, I guess you don't sack to Chandra's Ignition. But right. Hall of the Bandit Lord is really great to play on like your turn 3. So that you can play out Oaken on your turn 4. I've likely ramped already in that deck, or played an artifact ramp of some sort. So I think this card's great. And if you're running something where you need to swing immediately because you're afraid that your creature is going to get killed before you get one rotation around the board, this prevents that. The Oakens usually kill on spot, so
it sure is. The only downside you have to Hall of the Bandit Lord is if the creature you're casting does not have a generic mana in its casting cost, you cannot use it to give that creature haste. So, like if you have the first sliver, like any of the slivers, like Sliver Hive Lord or anything that doesn't have generic mana costs, sorry, this will not give it haste. You can't just add 1 mana to its mana cost in order to give it haste.
But if it's played on it towards commander tax, you're good to go.
Absolutely you are.
Just not the first time.
Right. So I played this in my Ilharg the Razebore deck, and it enables me to swing the turn Ilharg comes out and put a Blightsteel Colossus down and kill someone the first turn someone sees Ilharg.
Gross.
It's fantastic.
It is. It is.
People,
and then everybody else is just scared
to do that, but you got game 2.
Game 2, and they're like, I'm gonna go play with someone else. I don't want to play with you.
I'll play a different deck. It's fine. I just want to kill you with Blightsteel Colossus.
Hall of the Bandit Lord, yeah, that was what I used for my Narset deck, because you pretty much need to swing right away, and hopefully you swing on like turn 3 or turn 4 into someone who doesn't have a creature to block Narset, because she has to. You don't want her to die, because then she costs a lot of mana.
Lots of mana.
She's expensive immediately.
I know they printed in this newest set in Ikoria, they printed an enchantment called Footfall Craters. It's a 1 red land enchantment that says you can tap the land in order to give target creature haste and trample. And I think this is going to be a big card, this Footfall enchantment. But that involves having a land and the enchantment, where this is just a land. Now, it doesn't give trample, but it does give haste. So it's super good.
I'll still take it. 3 life is 3 life. Yeah. 3 life, shmurry life.
Shmeema. When you're going to kill someone, the turn you use it, who cares?
Yeah, so I think this was a good list of 10 utility lands that we like. You know, to be fair, we could do this episode 4 times and still have more utility lands we want to talk about.
Absolutely.
And they print more every set. So you just wait. I had a hard time not putting the castles from Throne of Eldraine on this.
I was thinking about them too.
I play all of the castles except for the red one, because I just don't have a deck that's going wide with red other than Omnath, and I just didn't want to put that in my Omnath deck. I had other like plans, I guess, than utilizing the castles.
You don't play that in your Torbrand deck?
Oh, you know what? I'm a big liar. I do run that. I totally run that in Torbrand. That totally makes sense. Yes, I do have that in my Torbrand deck. But I run other utility lands in my Omnath Locus of Rage deck.
Look at that transition.
Look at that. See, okay, so I had some bad segues and then some good segues. So this is a good one. So my Omnath Locus of Rage deck is a Land Matters deck. So Omnath itself is a 5/5 for 3 red, green, green. So 7 mana. Pretty stinking easy to get out.
7 mana is stinking easy to get out?
You'd be surprised at how much ramp I run in this deck.
Yeah.
So Omnath is an elemental that also has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under you control, you you create a red and green elemental creature token. And it also says whenever Omnath Locus of Rage or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So every time you play a land, you get another 5/5. 5/5 is ginormous. It's just so big. It's so big in Commander. It pretty much outclasses most power and toughness.
Absolutely.
So the whole point of this deck is to get out your Omnath, and then you're going to play lands, and you're going to get more creatures, and then you're both going to swing out, and then when all the things die, you just lightning bolt everything that lived, or just someone to the face. So you're running a lot of land ramp in this deck. So we've got Kodama's Reach, Explosive Vegetation, Cultivate, Sylvan Scrying, Rampant Growth. We're looking for all the lands, and we're looking for them to be on the battlefield right away. Mm-hmm. We also run Sword of the Animist. I put this in here because it's a tutor for a land to the battlefield tapped every time the equipped creature swings. You only search for a basic, but Omnath doesn't care what kind of land hits the battlefield.
That's right.
So along with that, we're playing some cards that care about tokens. So we've got a doubling season. So if an effect would put a token onto the battlefield, I put twice that many tokens. We don't care about the counters in this deck. We don't. I don't think there's a single card in this deck that cares about a counter, but it cares about the tokens.
The only one I could think of would maybe be Avenger of Zendikar.
Oh, you're right. You're right. How could I forget that? Okay, so Avenger does care about that. So I guess there is doubling season for that. And then we've also got Parallel Lives and Primal Vigor. So you do care about tokens, +1/+1 counters for Primal Vigor. Primal Vigor, people have said before that they don't run it because they don't want their opponents to benefit, but I feel like I still benefit more. So I run it. Primal Vigor says if one or more tokens we put onto the battlefield, you put twice that many. It's for everyone. So if someone puts in tokens, period, they get twice that many. And then if counters are +1/+1 counters are placed on a creature, it doubles those as well. You put twice that many. So it helps everyone. So to go along with this land ramp strategy, we've got some lands that come into play, as lands do.
That's what they do.
But they might come into play and then go get another land immediately. So we got the fetch lands, things like Wooded Foothills, Scalding Tarn. They come into play. You tap, sack them, search your library for, in Wooded Foothills' case, a mountain or a forest, put it on the battlefield. So when Wooded Foothills comes in, you make an elemental. Sacrifice it, grab the other land, put it into play. You make another elemental. You now have 15 power on the board. Yeah, it's really good. Fabled Passage came out of Throne of Eldraine. You can sacrifice it, search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tap, so you get 2 lands there. I do run Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse. A lot of the time, these are the fetch lands that people cut, but Omnath wants them. And then utility land-wise, though, I have Blighted Woodland. So it taps for a generic, or you can pay 4, 3 and a green, sack it, search for 2 basic lands, put them onto the battlefield, tap. So this is a ramp. I run a card called Ghost Town. I don't know any other decks that really want this unless it's, landfall decks care. But Ghost Town says taps for 1 colorless mana, or you can pay 0 and return it to your hand. Activate this only during another player's turn. So at the end of your opponent's turn, you pay 0 and put it back in your hand so that you can consistently have a land drop. Sometimes you won't want to if you have a land in your hand, but as you get later into the game, you want to make sure you make your land drop. Just return Ghost Town to your hand and play it back down. It comes in untapped, so it's the same amount of mana,
right?
That you had the previous turn.
Do you play Burgeoning in combination with Ghost Town?
You know what? I used to run Burgeoning. I don't anymore. I run Exploration, so I can play 2 on my turn, but I don't run Burgeoning. The only reason that I don't run Burgeoning anymore is because I find that in most cases, you want it on turn 1 and you want to have like 4 lands, but then you play that out in your 4 lands, and then you realize you only have 2 cards in your hand. Mm-hmm. And if one of them isn't card draw, you might be, it might hurt. Fair. Especially if you don't have a ton to do. That's my only reason. In many cases, that's really good. But I don't run Burgeoning. I also run Gruul Turf. When it comes into play, you return a land you control to its owner's hand, so you can consistently get your land drops there. Another utility land, Mosswort Bridge, comes into play tapped. You exile a card under it, and then once you have creatures with total power 10 or greater on the battlefield, you can pay green, tap, sack it, and or not sack it, but just tap it, and then cast the card that you put hide away, hid away under it for free. So with Omnath, you play Mosswort Bridge, you make a 5/5, you now have 10 power. On the next turn, you can cast that card that's under the Mosswort Bridge. And then I also run Kessig Wolf Run. So it's a utility land that says it taps for a generic mana, or you can pay X, a red and a green, and tap it, and give one of your creatures X plus O and trample. So this deck tends to have a lot of mana out. I think when we played this just the other day, I mean, at one point I think I had like 19 mana. So you can put like 15 mana into this and still have mana to do other things with it. So those are some of the lands that I play. And then you've got support in your creatures, right? So Omnath can win, alone. But once Omnath is targeted like 3 or 4 times, He costs a lot of mana, 7, then 9, then 11, then 13. Although every time that he was removed the last time, I was able to play it down that next turn just because of the amount of ramp. But you run cards like Avenger of Zendikar, so landfall. Well, when it enters, you make a 0/1 green plant for each land you control. So assuming you have a lot, you're going to make a bunch of plants. And then it has when a land enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each plant. So you're making a small army. You've got Azusa, Lost But Seeking. You can play 2 additional lands on your turns. Green Warden of Marasa. It's an elemental, which is why this card's really great. When it enters the battlefield, return a card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's got Eternal Witness on it. And then it says when it dies, you may exile it, and then you can do that again. You can turn another card from your graveyard to your hand. So that's really great. For the landfall strategy, you've got Lotus Cobra. When a land enters, you add a mana to your mana pool. Multani Yavamaya's Avatar, I think, is a really underrated creature. Reach, Trample, and Multani gets +1/+1 for each land you control and each land in your graveyard. So Reach and Trample usually ends up being like a 10/10 or more. And then from the most recent Commander set, obviously the newest one isn't officially released yet, so I guess last year's is still the most recently released Commander set. We've got Nesting Dragon. Landfall, you make a 0/2 dragon egg that has, when it dies, it becomes a flying dragon. So it's really strong against board wipes. Yeah, so this whole deck is about making creatures, a lot of elemental strategies, and then there's 2 cards that you can try to win it out with alone. Warstorm Surge is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage to its power equal to target creature or player. So if you're making 5/5s just by playing a land, this can end a game really quickly. And then I think I won with this the last 2 times we played is Purphoros, God of the Forge. So yeah, it's a 6/5. Indestructible God from the original Theros block that has whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So if you have Purphoros, every time you make one of your elementals, it's dealing 2 to each opponent. If you play Avenger of Zendikar and make 10 creatures on top of the Avenger, you're dealing 22 damage to your opponents. It snowballs really fast.
For sure.
Yeah. So this is my Omnath Locus of Rage deck. We'll post the link when we post the episode. I think that's the end of the episode. Ooh.
That was a very land-filled episode.
It was. And, I just hit my mic. It's cool. Sorry for all your ear holes.
As long as you don't hit me, Mike, that's fine with me.
I hit my mic. Are you my mic?
I don't know. Am I?
I don't know. I don't know many mics.
That's surprising. That's such a common name. That's why people call me Coyle, because there's so many mics out there.
The year I was born, my name was number 2 only to the name Michael.
Yeah.
Andrew was number 2. I graduated with 7 Andrews. And
a lot of Andrews.
Right. I assume there was a mic in the mix. I assume there was a mic somewhere in the mix.
Probably a few.
Producer Ryan is saying it's a very common name. Which one? Andrew or Mike? I assume he's saying Mike.
Probably both of them.
His roommate's name is Andrew.
Yeah, that's 2.
So there's 2 of us. He said pick a name.
Just pick a name. That's a common name. Thanks. Ryan.
Well, Ryan is also pretty common.
Yeah.
Ryan's a pretty common name. Well, thank you all for listening. If you want to contact us, you can find our podcast on Twitter at GuardianPod. You can find me at ATFlurry.
You can find me at WormCoilEngine.
You can also look for #GuardianProjectPod to find our posts and episodes on Twitter. And you can email us at guardianprojectpod@gmail.com. If you're on Discord and you're interested in joining the discussion, send us a message and we will get you into that. We have a lot of people talking about all different formats, spoilers, deck building. Come hang out with us.
Yeah, even some people come and play some League of Legends and stuff. So if you don't play Magic all the time, we have some good support there too.
Yeah, there is a non-Magic channel there that a lot of people set up games to hang out. So, I think that's a wrap for episode 46. We will be back next week with episode 47.
Wow, 47.
Can you believe that? 47 comes after 46.
Yeah. We're going to 50 here soon.
What? But you got to hit 50, 52. And then,
Why do we have to hit 52?
since
Oh,
it's a full
because
year.
weeks in a year. Yeah,
Because the weeks in
that
a year.
makes sense.
There's 52 of them.
That makes sense.
Can you believe that?
Sometimes, not always. I can't always believe it.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.